is why are so many young men drawn to Jordan Peterson? And there are a lot of young men who are not drawn to Jordan Peterson, and the ones who I've talked to who are not drawn to Jordan Peterson are just baffled. They're befuddled as to why he has so much popularity. In this video, I'm going to give 5 reasons why Jordan Peterson just strikes a chord amongst young men in particular, and we're going to do that in just a moment. So what makes Jordan Peterson so popular among young men? Just look at the comments on his videos and you just see young men just saying, thank you for this advice, thank you for this direction, thank you for finally saying this. And when you talk to people, I often find it's the young men who are really drawn to him.
More than 90% of the people who watch my videos on YouTube are men. Now that's weird because about 80% of psychology students are women. So that is not what you would expect, right? You'd expect that the majority of them would be women. And you might say, well, it's because of the political stance I've taken. And I thought, well, that's possible. So I went and looked at the demographic data because I have that. Well, before I did any of the political videos, 85% of my viewers were men. And then now I've been watching crowds when I've been talking to them. And the crowds that have come to see me in person. This happened at the University of Toronto free speech debate. And I actually noticed it and commented on it before the debate took place because I was talking about intrinsic differences between men and women. And I looked around the room and I thought, hey, 80% of the people in this room are men. So I had all the women stand up and then all the men stand up. I said, look, like, here's a natural experiment. For some reason, 80% of the people who showed up to this are men. Now everybody thought I was kind of cracked to do that. And it was a risk, you know, but I thought, no, there's something going on here. And then what's interesting now is that every public appearance that I've made that's related to the sort of topics that we're discussing is overwhelmingly men. It's like 85 to 90%.
The first thing is this: Jordan Peterson is very well studied. He has his feet in a lot of worlds: the world of mythology, the world of psychology, the world of psychoanalysis, the world of theology, the world of culture and literature and world religions. He has just read relentlessly and studied everyone from Freud to Piaget to Jung to Homer to Paul and Christianity to Hinduism. I mean, just all across the map, Judaism, Islam. The man has studied all sorts of things, secular literature, Dostoevsky, Solzhenitsyn. He is just so well read and so well studied, and he just seems to have such a retention of the things that he studies that he's able to articulate, this is the first point, articulate and integrate complex fields of information. He's able to articulate and integrate complex fields of information. That's a very hard thing to do and a very rare person who is able to do something to the degree and the skill that Jordan Peterson does that. Now, there's no way that he has become an expert in all of those things, and some of the problems that I've had with Jordan Peterson just stem from what I believe is a misunderstanding of the gospel message itself from a biblical and theological perspective. But again, you have to give the guy some credit for being extremely well read in all sorts of diverse areas. And again, his ability to make a point that draws off of all those different areas, from Greek mythology to New Testament theology to philosophy to secular writing, it's pretty incredible. Okay. Now, the second thing is his appeal to the data. Jordan Peterson is relentless in his appeal to the data. And so he's saying, you know, we don't just base our views and opinions on important matters on a whim or on emotions or on popular opinion, but that we can actually, because he is a researcher, a clinical psychologist, is typically someone who does clinical work and research, and often clinical work is integrated into the research. So an example of this would be this discussion about gender and the discussion about men and women and their differences. He's going to point to the data and say, not only are men and women different, here's exactly how they are different. His ability to integrate that kind of information and to do it on the fly mid-presentation is just incredible. It's just so savvy with that. And the third is, it just really feels like he doesn't have a personal agenda that he's trying to drive you toward. A lot of people have a real misperception of Peterson, thinking he's a conservative. He is a self-described liberal. He's not conservative at all. So the fact that many people think he's conservative probably says he's doing it right. But he doesn't seem like he's trying to sway you to an agenda, but instead what he's trying to do is to draw you to the best explanation that fits the data and is pragmatic, okay? And that is so appealing because so much of academia has answers that are not pragmatic and has answers that are very biased and skewed and trying to draw you into particular conclusions. And so it just seems like he doesn't have his personal agenda in the way so much as he's seeking truth, and he's seeking the best, most reasonable explanation that is data-driven and pragmatic. And that is also very unusual these days, unfortunately, that we have answers that don't really work in the real world. The fourth is he is authentic even at personal expense, even at cost to himself. There are things that he says that would just be easier not to say. There are things that he dives into that are uncomfortable. And the fact that he's so willing to jump into those areas and articulate his position so clearly and to back it up with so much data is just so authentic. Even if you don't like what he's saying, at least you know he really believes what he's saying. And part of what makes him authentic is he presents himself as a person who is actually trying to live into the things that he says that he believes. This has been one of his hang-ups toward being a Christian, toward Christianity, being a disciple, is he's realized, he said in his lectures, that although this may be slightly changing, and I hope that it is, that his reason for not accepting Jesus as the Christ is because he knows that he would have to realign his life around those kingdom principles. And that's being authentic. It's saying, I'm going to live into the things that I believe. I'm going to live with integrity. I'm going to live with consistency. You don't find a lot of consistent, integrous people anymore. The fifth is that he really normalized things. He normalized normal things. What we've seen in the last 20 years, even 5 years, is the denormalizing of normal things. You just take just everyday kind of things and just talk about how twisted it is, how messed up it is. Things that are just typically completely normal, these become microaggressions and things like this. He's just saying, like, men are wired different. Men are men. That doesn't mean men should be abusive. If you're a normal person who the world was telling was crazy, all of a sudden you think to yourself, maybe I'm not as bad off as I thought I was. Now, for some, that can certainly become an excuse for bad behavior, to say, well, I'm just all this bad, normal, testosterone-driven stuff is just normal, and so I'm just going to carry on with my anger problem. I'm going to carry on with a violence problem or something. He's not okaying violence or oppression or anything like that. He's just saying men are different and men are men. And so let's just normalize that for a bit. And I think lastly here, and it's not really a sixth point as much as just to say he really came at the right time. He came in a time in our culture where people are very confused, where people don't know who to trust, where people don't know who to listen to or look to for wisdom or advice. And he came authentically. He came without presenting much agenda. Again, people who think he's a conservative, but he's actually a liberal, means he's doing something right. He's not trying to pin you into a corner and force you into saying things his way or doing things his way. In fact, he's absolutely pushing against that. But he wants your conclusions to be well-reasoned. He wants your conclusions to be well thought out. I think about C.S. Lewis, who grew up in an environment where he was pressed into defending his views. There was a mentor in his life, a teacher in his life, who continuously pressed C.S. Lewis into being able to articulate what it is that he believed and why it is that he believed that. I see that in Peterson, and I think that's a rare commodity these days. And part of what also made the right time for Peterson is just the absence of fatherly wisdom for a lot of men. They just didn't grow up in homes where wisdom was normal, where wisdom was presented in instructing ways and teachable ways. It was just overlooked, or it was just missed in the life of busyness, or fathers and husbands who were consumed by other things. And so he really acts as a father figure to many men. Now, that may terrify you if you're terrified by Jordan Peterson, but I will say that I believe that there are a lot of people unnecessarily terrified by Jordan Peterson, that if you actually don't just listen to what people say about him, but do him justice by going to his primary sources, reading his works, watching his lectures, and actually listening to him, not just sound bites, not just out of context sound bites, but spend a few hours really listening to what it is he's saying. Read 12 Rules for Life and look at the way he's able to integrate diverse streams of information into coherent, meaningful, articulate, pragmatic wholes. And there is some real value in Peterson. Even if you disagree with his conclusion, he will at least teach you to have integrity and to be well-reasoned. And last, just to be authentic, and that consistency to show people authenticity. You know, there's a real hesitation in Christian circles just to say, we don't know, or this is complicated, or it's murky, or there could be a couple things going on here. We're going to have to choose the best option. In Christianity, sometimes we become inauthentic because we present one side of things without any respect or appreciation for other explanations that may be equally valid. Or again, even just to have the humility to say, well, we just really don't know on that one. This is why I think Jordan Peterson is so popular. And not to say we should imitate him or be a disciple of Peterson or just believe everything he says, because I don't agree with everything he says, but he helps me think better. He helps me think better, he helps me reason better, he helps me think about my conclusions and whether or not I'm living with consistency into the beliefs which I state. So hope it's helpful. If it is, please subscribe, and we would love for you to watch some more videos at the end of this popping up right now, or some more videos for you to check out. So I hope you'll do that. Tell a friend, and we will see you soon.